I'd like to call the September 28, 2017 meeting of the Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District to order at 1 p.m. If you please stand, Chair Landry lead us in a prayer and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
We take this moment to acknowledge Almighty God and thank Him for our bountiful blessings, especially for the parish's natural resources. We give thanks to God for our brave and courageous men and women in our military who daily risk their lives to protect our precious freedom, and we pray for our world leaders to know how to attain world peace. We pray that this government body, comprised of both council and administration, will always serve our parish with honesty, humility, and equality to all, and for the wisdom to know right from wrong and the courage to do that which is right. And as this government body gathers here today, we pray that we will be spared from all harm and destruction this hurricane season. Amen.
Pledge allegiance to the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please open the machine for a roll call, please. Let the record reflect that all council members are present except for Mr. Burt from District 6. All right, we move to item 3, status report by the Executive Report Director, Director Sanders.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the board. I am Sandy Sanders, Executive Director of Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District. What follows is my Executive Director report for the reporting period of 15 to 27 September. During this time frame, I have met twice with a Houston company that wishes to locate on our shores and build an ammonia and fertilizer production facility for export. We have cited 2 potential sites for their project and have also assisted in introducing development partners to them. Unique to this group is that they already have offtakes for their projects. This project would be roughly a $1.2 to $1.5 billion program. We participated in a discussion hosted by State Rep. Chris Leopold. It featured Secretary of Department of Transportation, Mr. Sean Wilson, regarding a Peters Road update. It was very well attended by our community leaders, and it was assuring that there is a funded way forward to keep this important project on track. We had a meeting with the LA Workforce Commission to review workforce incentives for prospective port tenants. If the folks in this room are not aware of what our State Workforce Commission makes available to new tenants that are coming here into our area, it is a very big, tremendous resource, a very good incentive. I think we can compete with any other state on those incentives in that workforce training. We have continued our discussions with 3 investor groups that are interested in our port project. We are beginning some preliminary proposal designs and contract negotiations, which Bob Stevens with Trident is outlining for us. I have continually kept the headquarters in Houston, the ILA headquarters in Houston, up to date on our port progress as well. We met with the Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Mike Strain, who was also the top agricultural commissioner for the 50 state commissioners at President Trump's Infrastructure Committee in D.C. He understands very well our project, the need for infrastructure, the impact that American Patriot Holdings brings to our port, and he is ready to assist us when we ask for federal funding. He told us pretty much what Sean Wilson told us the other night too, that most likely it will be 20% federal, 80% private money. We anticipated that. I reviewed with him where our sources of private money that we were conferring with. Once again, he said when we're ready to go to the federals, he would be on our team. We met with the Naval Air Station Base CO regarding the preliminary proposal for the introduction of commercial air cargo onto the Naval Air Station. He had some minor corrections for the plan, and once Captain Sugato has signed off on the latest corrections, it will start the process through the chain of command for introduction. Lastly, Mr. Chairman, I would like to publicly recognize one of our staff. If I could have Erica Brown stand up. I would like to introduce to y'all Erica Brown, who has recently completed her Bachelor of Science degree in accounting at Iowa University. Fantastic. Erica is probably one of the most quietest of employees that we have. She does her work very professionally and completely. And I might add that she has a son who's also entering the United States Army as a second lieutenant in the Transportation Corps. We're very proud of him as well. We all know it's pretty tough to go back to school and to get your degree. She's an inspiration, and we're very proud of her. So thank you, Erica. Mr. Chairman, subject to your questions or remarks from the board or the audience, this completes my report.
Thank you, and congratulations, Erica. Watch out, Chimbro. Do we have any comments or questions from the table? Any from the audience? All right, with none, I'm going to give a personal privilege to Mr. Russo, who has an announcement to make. Mr. Russo.
Thank you. I ask for this personal privilege to introduce today Mr. Randy Duke, who has been hired as the Internal Auditor for Plaquemines Parish under Section 708 of the Plaquemines Parish Charter. Mr. Duke is a graduate of the University of New Orleans with a degree in accounting, is a certified public accountant, a certified Inspector General Auditor, and a certified Internal Auditor. We are very pleased to have Mr. Duke join our team with his experience in local government, starting with the Jefferson Parish offices as well as the Supreme Court audit work that he has done. So, Mr. Duke, at this time I'd like to welcome you and ask you to stand. Welcome you to the team, and if you'd like to say a few words, you can come to the podium. You pass. Well, we thank you and welcome you aboard.
Thank you, Mr. Russo, and welcome aboard, Mr. Duke. Good to have you. All right, we'll move to item 5, introductions of ordinance resolutions. I see we have none. No? Move to item 6A1.
An ordinance providing authority for the continuation of the levy and collection of the ad valorem tax of 3 mills on the property subject to taxation situated in the boundaries of the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor and Terminal District, as authorized by Chapter 8 of Title 34 of the Louisiana Revised Statutes of 1950 as amended, and other constitutional and statutory authority, is applicable to be dedicated and used for all lawful purposes by the district, including but not limited to the acquisition of immovable property and the construction of capital improvements, and otherwise provide with respect thereto. Councilmember Black.
I'll offer. Do you have a second? Ms. Edgecombe, seconds. Basically, this is the last of the millage adoption. Pretty much housekeeping. I'm not sure if Chimbro, if you want to, whoever wants to discuss this particular.
Yes, sir. This is the last year that the port plans on assessing a millage We will be paying off our bond in April of 2018, which would be used with these funds. That will be the final payment. The board originally had adopted the 3 mills, and we had the opportunity to do it for 5 years, and we will be paying off our bond and no longer needing the millage after 4 years.
All right, Mr. Russo. You have any? Mr. Mathalan?
Question. For question.
Mr. Mathalan, call for the question. Open the machine for a vote, please.
Oh, you had a question before? I'm sorry.
The 1.5.
1 second, hold on.
I'll take.
Hold on 1 second.
I request to, take a second.
Okay. Can we, clear the board, please?
Apologize, I didn't see it.
1 second. All right.
Belinda Hazel, Plaquemines Parish Assessor. Just a point of clarity, I was under the impression that it's 1.5.
Am I on? Yes, ma'am, it is 1.5. I was stating that the port had the authority to assess 3 mills for the 5 years. I just was given a little history, but yes, this millage is only for 1.5 mills.
Okay.
And that stated, the preamble states 3, but in
In the
I think
full
it's-
document.
Yeah, the full document, it states that we reduced it.
As long as everyone understands what we're doing, including me. All right.
Mr. President.
Yes. If you could, please give us the statutory authority by which the Plaquemines Port Harbor Terminal District will be levying Plaquemines Parish-wide ad valorem tax.
Yeah. I can get that for you. I don't know the statute by heart, but I'll pull it for you and get that for you.
Thank
I
you.
believe it's,
34.
yeah, Chapter 8, Title 34, Louisiana Revised Statutes, 1950.
Chapter 8, Title 34.
Chapter 8, Title 34.
Yes, Chapter 8, Title 34.
President, it's fine. Yeah. All right. Mr. Russo?
Just as I have not supported the imposition of millages without a vote of the public, and therefore, I don't vote on these millages or the extension of the millages. So just to let everyone know that that's been my position from day one, that if the public does not get to vote on a property tax, I don't vote on it as well. So I won't be voting on this renewal, even though, it's the last year. Thank you.
And I just want to make note as well, just for clarification, that this council and this port commit, and this as the governing body for the port, reduced the mills from 3 down to 1.5 over the last 2 years. So we actually reduced the mills that was adopted prior to this current council taking office. So, Mr. President.
Chapter, is Title 34, which statute was it?
Chapter 8, Title 34, it is, hold on 1 second.
I can't get into my computer to look it up.
Yeah, Danny?
Chairman,
Title 34, Section 1351 establishes the territorial jurisdiction of the Plaquemines Parish Port Harbor Terminal District as coextensive with the parish of Plaquemines, so that shows the jurisdiction where it's live. And 34-1356 is the provision that authorizes the governing authority of the district to levy.
All right, thank you. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, thank you.
Who wants it? All right, just trying to get some technical issues resolved. Mr. President?
Yes, if I may just request, I don't know if Mr. Garrett's the proper party that inquires to this, but when the charter, Plaquemines Parish Charter, was voted on by the people of Plaquemines, it was, the Port Harbor and Terminal District was subsumed into the Plaquemines Parish Charter as a district. And this is just a question: is it the position that that the state, this continues to be a state entity despite the vote of the people, or is it the position that this is an entity that's part of, forms part of the parish charter?
I don't think we're going to engage in a debate whether this council has that authority or not, Mr. President, with all due respect. So I'm going to call the question on this vote. And the village passes, renewal passes 5-2 with nay votes for Mr. Roussel and Ms. Solon. Item 6A2, please.
An ordinance to amend and as amended re-adopt ordinance number 07-102 adopted May 10, 2007 to establish and initiate the collection of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District security fees and otherwise provide with respect thereto. Councilmember Black.
I'll offer that for a second. Mr. Levine seconds. This is basically housekeeping as well. I'll turn it over to Sandy.
Yes, sir. This is an annual vote that comes up before the Gulf Ports Association. It is an increase from 9.25 to 9.53 of the total dockage per port call. It would equate to about $160,000+ to the port.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions, Mr. Roussel?
I just want to,
Hold on a second. Should be okay.
I'd like to point out that this increase comes about every year. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And so when we talk about, the business of the port and how financially strong and well they're doing, part of that is because you get an annual increase every year. Unlike the government, we don't get annual increases every year. In fact, we've been declining in revenue for some time. So I think that there's a benefit to the port to be able to roll these fees like you do in unison, so the competition is the same. Has the issue ever arisen about some type of price fixing among the ports?
Ports can opt.
Ports can opt out of this if they like on an individual basis.
Am I still on? So I was just wondering, how that works though, as far as anybody looked at it from that standpoint. I realize that you get together and they can opt out. Just because they opt out, is that what allows it to be a flexible and independent decision?
Commissioner, every year the Gulf Ports Association of the Americas come together, that means ports,
as far west of the Gulf in Brownsville all the way to Tampa meet, and this year they met at Gulfport, Mississippi. And the GPAA, their members, which includes us, made a recommendation, and then it's the port's decisions to decide what they want to do. And this is annually. So some opt out, some opt in, but it's a recommendation, and we have agreed as a staff to go with the recommendation of GPAA.
Where's that finished?
Yeah, I'll just keep thinking about this one.
Questions or comments from the table? If none, any questions or comments from the audience? If none, Ms. Marcotte, machine for vote, please. Would you like to give a verbal, Ms. Sullivan?
I'm going to abstain on this one.
All right, we have a 7 yeas and 1 abstention from District 7. We're going to defer item 6B, move to item 6C.
An ordinance of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing authority of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District to direct that all meetings of the Plaquemines Parish Council as the sole governing of the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District shall be conducted in the council chambers in Building 203 at 333 F. Edward A. Bear Boulevard in Belle Chase, Louisiana, until such time as the construction of the meeting space in Point Lahash has been completed. Councilmember Edgecombe.
Mr. Edgecombe will offer this, I'll second. Mr. Edgecombe?
Thank you, sir.
Try that out, because I'm not sure the mics are working properly on this thing right here. Is it working? No, it's not. Okay.
Yes, there we go.
There we go. All right. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think with this state-of-the-art facility, just like it says in the body of this ordinance, that until the courthouse gets built on the East Bank, I hope that we can have all the meetings here, sir.
All right, thank you. Mr. Vitaleman?
Yeah, my turn.
Is it on?
Testing.
Okay, now it's on you. I think there's a delay for something.
First of all, you're in violation of the charter, number 1. And that's against the law. You cannot do that unless the people make a decision of voting to change the charter. Now, this is in Belle Chase, and the Dayland Community Center is in Point Lahash. So which one is closer to the county seat in Point Lahash? Dayland or Belle Chase? Secondly, this council approved Dayland Center to be the site to have the meetings in support of giving up the Point Lahash Chamber by the Water Department because we was in a crisis of a deficit of funding that was needed. And it was voted upon to close it and give FEMA, whomever had on those trailers that we had set up for the meetings, to give it back so we don't have to pay that, I know, a couple $1,000 a year rent for that building. And this council agreed to do that. Now we got legislation that's coming in on today's table for a vote, which is specifically against the charter. It's against the charter. And where are we to determine how to defend the charter when we're in violation of the charter? Now, if this passes, I am requesting Danny Garrett, as a council member, to submit to the court to get a summary judgment on this ordinance. As of today, I'm requesting, if this passes, to get a summary judgment. We cannot violate the charter legally. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Ms. Sullivan? I don't press the button.
Okay, Mr. Chairman,
Ma'am.
my position is similar to what Mr. Bartholomew just indicated, but in addition to what he just said, as it being in violation, in my opinion, I mean, it's nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. We have already agreed to alternate the meetings from Davant to here. As nice as this chambers is, it just doesn't make sense. It's nonsensical, as I just mentioned. You know, the constituency of this district, of this parish, voted at least 4 times on the location of our county seat. And each time there was a return vote and an overwhelmingly vote that that the seat would remain at Point LaHash. So I don't want to give in to, I will not be supporting this, and I will join co-authoring the request that Mr. Bartholomew made early in the summary judgment, because I think this is crazy. And I don't want to support the buy-in to what a few folks made early on from that former council seat. I don't want to buy into that whim of the seat should be in Belchase. That went out the window. That's no longer on the table. It's not even an argument. You know, so to encourage people to continue to come to Belchase, I mean, you're just violating and disregarding what the constituency said. So again, Mr. Bartholomew, Mr. Garrett, I would be co-authoring that request that Mr. Bartholomew made. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the table? Any from the audience?
That's Warren Lawrence, 120 Timber Canal Lane, Meadow Grove. I just question from the public standpoint on this, that, you know, a matter like this should be deferred until we get a legal opinion on what you're doing. I mean, we already have an ordinance that says where it's going to meet. And now you're going to introduce another ordinance to override the other ordinance. Do we have to cancel the other ordinance before we can initiate a new ordinance to take an override?
I'm not following you.
Okay, in other words, there was an ordinance already passed when they moved it out to temporary trailers to put it into Davant. And they moved it there. Now, that ordinance is being overridden by another ordinance. It would seem like you're going to have opposing ordinances on the books. One ordinance that says it's going to be a Davant because that's the closest location to the Point LaHash parish seat. And now you're taking another ordinance, and it appears that the general public, just a question I have is, will they end up with 2 ordinances on the book contradicting each other?
I'll let our legal counsel answer that question, Mr. Garrett.
When the council adopts an ordinance that conflicts with a prior ordinance, the more recent ordinance supersedes. It's no different than what happens in Congress or the legislature. They enact a new law that supersedes the old law. You don't have to go back and formally repeal it. It's repealed as a matter of law if there's a conflict. It's the latest expression of legislative will.
So in other words, an ordinance can supersede the charter.
No, you mentioned that there was a previous ordinance out there. So if you adopt an ordinance on the same subject matter that conflicts, the more recent ordinance would implicitly repeal the prior ordinance.
Okay.
That was I thought was the issue that you raised.
I would just conclude that I think it should be deferred and taken a legal opinion on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Bartholomew.
On the charter. As it reflects in the charter, just a violation of the charter.
1 second. Mr. Nam.
Well, the provision of the charter has to do with the council, and it states the parish council shall meet regularly in public session at the parish seat at such times as may be specified by its rules of procedure, but not less than once each month. Parish council may declare a vacation period for the council during which the meetings not to be held. Special meetings may be held at any place within the Blackman's Parish as provided by the rules of procedure adopted by the parish council, or as called by the parish president, or as provided by law. Those are the 2 relevant paragraphs. Now, as I appreciate what's before y'all now, it's actually an ordinance with regard to the council acting in its capacity as the governing authority of the Plaquemines Parish, Port Harbor, and Terminal District. So I don't know if that provision of the charter specifically applies when you're meeting as the governing authority of the Port Harbor and Terminal District, as opposed to when you're meeting as the parish governing authority.
You still haven't answered my question. Is it legal or not if this is a violation of the charter? Yes or no?
I haven't done any specifically research on this, but from my reading of what we have here, because this ordinance has to do with the meetings of the council when it is serving as the governing authority of the Plaquemines Parish, Port Harbor, and Terminal District, I don't think that the provisions of section 4.09A and B would necessarily apply.
As it states, all regular scheduled meetings should be held at the county seat. Is it not that statement in the charter?
Well, and again, the charter,
The question is it not the statement in the charter? Yes or no?
no, that's not what the charter says. The charter says
Well,
the
you said-
parish council shall meet regularly, but it's the meetings of the parish council in its capacity as the parish governing authority in that section of the charter. So I think that section of charter would specifically apply when you're talking about the council meeting as the parish governing authority. But y'all have a somewhat unique situation in that the statute creating the port provides that the governing authority of the port is essentially the council. But just as you're the chairman of the council, Mr. Black is the chairman when y'all are sitting as the Port Harbor and Terminal District Commission, y'all essentially have two hats. So I don't know that that provision of the charter would specifically apply. Now, certainly that's something we could request the AG's office to take a look at. That may be a cost-effective.
I'm telling you, I mean, don't take a rocket science to see that. Now, we can go around it all the way we want to, but it's in violation of the charter. And that needs to be understood. I mean, I can't stop people from voting the way they want to vote to, but when you become circumvent the one body, get violent against the law, this is what this is, the law. And you want to violate the law? How can you represent the law when you violate it? I don't have more questions.
Ms. Sullivan?
Yes, Mr. Garrett?
Yes, ma'am.
No, I want to make my comment, direct my comment to Mr. Garrett. He just mentioned when you addressed Mr. Lawrence earlier, you indicated that one ordinance would supersede, the last ordinance would supersede the previous ordinance.
Yes, ma'am.
But why is it that time after time after time, whenever we introduce another ordinance relative to a previous ordinance, the preamble always reflects amended, that we are amending the previous ordinance. And in this case, this is not what Mr. Edgecombe did. So I'm being a little bit confused. Or as long as I know, whenever an additional ordinance come in that's referring to a previous ordinance that already been adopted, it always reflect and utilize and use the word amended. That we are amending something in addition to.
And I would agree, that's probably the better way to style it. And you could also even indicate that it's repealing a particular ordinance, but under a general rule statutory construction, if the more recent ordinance, as it would conflict with any prior ordinance, implicitly repeals that prior ordinance. So for example, if you had a circumstance that maybe there was an ordinance passed 15 years ago and nobody knew about it, everybody had forgotten about it, nobody had brought it up, and you passed an ordinance that was on that same subject matter, if there was a question as to which of those provisions prevailed, it would be the more recent. So, I mean, as far as the preamble, would it be a good idea to if you knew that there was another ordinance out there, to include that in the preamble? I think so. I don't think it's one of the requirements that is set forth in the charter with regard to how an ordinance has to be crafted. But again, I would agree with you, that's probably a better way to do it, is if you're amending an ordinance that you know about, to reference it. But as a rule of statutory construction, if there's a conflict, a more recent ordinance would generally prevail.
Okay, and the reason I'm making it, because I'm wondering now, beginning to wonder if this legislation was written intentionally like that, because just as Mr. Lawrence said, you know, I know everybody at this council seat remember that there was a recent ordinance on the table indicating, you know, so it looks like to me.
I didn't draft it, so I don't know.
I'm referring to the council member that ordered this legislation or aborted this legislation. That's the reason I made my comment earlier. It should have read amending, then that would have automatically prompted everybody to know that there was a previous ordinance out there. But for you to just say, okay, I'm just starting from anew, but then you don't have any inkling that there was a previous ordinance, as Mr. Lawrence said, that the council already previously adopted. And that's my take.
We'll go to the podium.
Oh, Mr. Russo, what's your take on this?
We'll come back to Mr. Russo if you can ask.
I can ask him a question. Can I hear on board?
Yeah, but I have a cue to follow. I'm going to go ahead, Ms. Williams.
I just, with this legislation, in reference to what Mr. Badalamy said, being in violation of the charter, are we not in violation of the charter based on the legislation we passed to hold the meetings in Dayvan? That would be my question, Mr. Garrett.
As I appreciate, and again, I wasn't here when that decision was made, there was a decision that you didn't have an available facility in the designated parish seat. And so y'all, again, if you have a provision of law that is impossible, then you have to sort of figure out a way to get past it. So as I appreciate, y'all made that decision at some point to not have meetings actually in Point LaHash because you didn't have a facility that you felt was sufficient or available. Again, I wasn't here when y'all made that decision. And I can appreciate, I think it's been articulated that maybe the middle ground was to have it either in Port, I know y'all had meetings in Port Sulphur and in Davon since I've been involved. And then y'all also had a meeting up here because you're only mandated to have one meeting a month, but y'all have two. So again, if you have a provision of law that is impossible to comply with, then the question is whether or not your actions are then reasonable. Again, that's not really, I mean, I can issue my opinion, but that's not, I don't think that's necessarily binding. I do think it would be important that, particularly once you have a facility in Point LaHash, as I appreciate y'all are currently in the process of building, that you adhere to the strict language of the charter in that regard and have your meetings there. So, if I can, I think that's best I can do right now.
I just wanted to, because I do agree with Mr. Badalamy, we are not, this is not the county seat, but neither is Dayvan. So, you know, that's why I posed that question.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williams. Mr. President.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is not a merely intellectual exercise. As I stated before just a little while ago, and I didn't state a position on the tax that was recently voted upon. The reason why I bring up the critical distinction is because of the history here. The reason why the Port Harbor and Terminal District was included in our charter, and I'll refer you to section 101 where it states it as an exclusivity provision. It excludes the sheriff, the clerk of court, the assessor, the district court judges, and the district attorney. And then in section 2.03 it says that the parish government shall succeed to all the powers, duties, jurisdictions of all districts therein. The reason why this was done was so that we would not have to face the problems that Jefferson Parish is facing today and that St. Bernard Parish has been facing. Because Jefferson Parish's complaint right now is that they are part of the Port of New Orleans, and yet they have no say and they receive no revenue. St. Bernard is similarly treated. Now, the leaders of our parish back in the 60s saw this occurring, and the reason why they took the Port Harbour Terminal District underneath parish government was so that the state legislature couldn't go and get a simple majority of votes and take over the Port of Plaquemines. And so on this issue right now, my opinion is that we follow the charter, not because of some of the more obvious reasons stated, but because there's a big long-term game here at play. And the long-term game is that we want to continue to maintain our autonomy, the autonomy of the port, the autonomy of this parish government. Because if it's a state legislative statute and it's not part of the charter, the state legislature can take it anytime it wants. And so we will have paid all these taxes and purchased all this land just for the Port of New Orleans or some other state entity to come in and take over. And as a parish president who represents the taxpayers of Plaquemines, I simply would request that we safeguard our autonomy. And the best way to safeguard our autonomy is to follow what the people who drafted these charters, going back as far as the 60s, which provided us with protection so that we wouldn't be in a position that Jefferson Parish is in, where they're just taken along for the ride. Akin to what happened in Kenner with the airport, where the airport authority in New Orleans takes the money and the revenue, and Kenner gets the traffic and headaches. That's the reason, that's the history behind all this. So I would simply recommend that, since we do have this in our charter, and I'm not saying, maybe the Port of New Orleans, maybe the state legislature won't do this. And I don't mean to cast dispersions, because maybe they have no interest in Plaquemines. But I just do know what the problems are in Jefferson, the complaints there. I do know what the problems and complaints are in St. Bernard. And I do know the history of our parish government and the rationale for us maintaining our independence. And the reason for that independence is so we're not subject to the whims of the state legislature. It's the people who are elected directly by the parish citizens will be represented by this council.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Edgecombe?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this time, I would like to defer this item for now and get a little bit more clarity and a little bit more answers and questions, and we'll come back to it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. You want to? Item 6E.
D.
No, I'm sorry, D is deferred. 6E.
A resolution providing for the execution of an agreement between the Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District and the owners of the $9,500,000 Plaquemines Port Harbor and Terminal District Taxable Limited Tax Revenue Bonds, Series 2001-3, relating to the reductions of a millage securing the bonds and providing for other matters with respect thereto. Councilmember Black.
I'll offer next for a second. I'll offer next for a second. I'll offer and ask for a second. Mr. Edgecombe, seconds. All right. Chamberlain, you want this?
This is a resolution that will allow us to amend the agreement securing the bonds based on 1.5 instead of 3 mils.
Okay. Any other comments from the, Mr. Edgecombe?
I'm listening.
Can you remove it? Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Russo?
Yes, on this new agreement, are there any penalties for us going in this direction financially?
No, sir.
Thank you.
comments from the table? With none, any comments from the audience? With none, Ms. Marcotte, you open the machine for a vote, please. Let the record reflect that 6E passes 7-0 with one abstention from District 7. Items F, G, H, I, and J will all be deferred. We'll move to item 7A1. Ms. Marcotte.
A resolution providing for the establishment of a separate account with Regions Bank for the advanced funds that, as that term is described in the real estate lease option agreement and First Amendment thereto, and otherwise provide with respect thereto. Councilmember Blank.
I'll offer. Mr. Russell seconds. This is basically what we've done as a council with the VP funds. These are the advanced rent payments. We're creating at the recommendation of the administration of the port, and we appreciate you guys taking that lead when we did with the VP funds to make it more transparent as to where those funds are going to go to. This basically creates a separate account for the advanced rent payments at Regions Bank in order for us to be able to track those funds more easily. So I appreciate that resolution being given to us. I don't know, do we have any comments from the table, Mr. Russo?
Motion second.
Okay. Any other comments from the table? Any comments from the audience? With none, Ms. Marcotte? This is for the suspension only, yes.
Machine is open.
We're missing one vote. Miss, who is it? I can't see.
This will be part where you have 5 people voting on it.
All we need is 5. Suspension passes 8-0. We'll move to the vote on the actual resolution. Resolution passes 8-0. Move to item 8, please.
Approval of the September 14, 2017 meeting minutes.
I'll offer. Mr. Russo seconds. Ms. Marcotte. Minutes pass 8-0. Make a motion to adjourn. Edgecombe has a motion to adjourn. Mr. Juneau seconds. Ms. Marcotte.
One vote pending.
The record reflected the adjournment passes 8-0. We adjourned the board meeting at 1:50 p.m.